So what is the Laelia purpurata doing right now? Stay tuned to find out. Hi, I'm Jess. Welcome to Attainable Green, and today we're going to be talking about the Laelia purpurata. This is going to be a care collab with several other YouTubers, and I will list them on the screen and in the description below. Please follow along and see if our growing environments and setups are beneficial to you and can help you become a better grower of this Laelia purpurata. My Laelia purpurata is currently in recovery still. Last year, it had a nice, healthy new growth, and this year's growth that matured is about half the size of last year's, and there is a new growth coming soon. The node at the bottom of the cane has swollen, and so I know a new growth will be coming shortly. This plant is grown outside in my second-story patio, and it gets basically full sun in the southwestern direction. Last month, I decided to cover most of my Cattleyas under a 50% shade cloth so that it doesn't get burned by the intense heat and light. By covering these plants, I'm hoping that the color of the Cattleyas will do much better. This plant can take very high light, but as you can see, it's pretty yellow on the bulbs, and the leaves itself are light green. I want the plant to be grown in slightly shadier conditions so that it doesn't have to strain itself to maintain its health. It's currently potted up in large bark, but I know that it drains a little too quickly for my liking, and it's not holding enough water. So at the next repot, I will be using a finer, more water retentive media. Currently, this plant is growing in a kind of U-shaped pattern, so I didn't really have to repot this plant too often, and it looks like it's going to stay relatively compact, at least for the next growth. So I have about a year or two before I need to repot this plant. So this plant has been recovering for about 2 years now, and it's basically been in recovery since I got it. Looking at it today, the newest growth is quite plump. It looks healthy, and the plant itself seems to be really pushing along. I think there's something in my culture that's kind of preventing it from doing the best, and as you can see, all the other pseudobulbs of this plant is completely desiccated. The bulbs are really wrinkled, so I know that there's something that's missing from this plant. I decided to compare what the climate is like from where these plants grow in the wild to my current climate here in Southern California. That way I can visually see what is the discrepancy and the difference between what they would get in the wild and what they would get here in the wild, and see if I can supplement or provide better care for this plant. Obviously, I know it needs a lot more water, but the amount of water and the frequency is something I need to check out. So I'm picking Florianopolis in Brazil as the city that I'm going to compare to where I am here. So looking at temperature curve is fairly similar. It does make the dip in the winter, it gets warm in the summer, and that's fairly typical. The range, however, is where there is a difference. What I didn't expect is that there would be such a large range. It's about 10 degrees in the wintertime, so it gets down to 45 here, and in Brazil, it doesn't get lower than 55 degrees. So that tells me that I either have to bring the Cattleya inside during the winter season so I can continue growing, or I have to keep the plant drier in the winter season so that it slows down and conserves its resources so it doesn't get too wet and too cold and cause problems for the plant later down the line. During the winter season, this plant definitely slows down to a standstill, and the temperature is definitely one part of that equation. Looking at the summer temperatures, it looks like we get about the average high temperatures, the same as Florianopolis. Looking at that, I can tell that this plant can definitely take the higher temperatures here, so I don't have to worry too much about this plant getting sunburned or too hot during the summertime. Next is water. In order to figure out the water requirements for this plant, I'm going to be comparing the average rainfall that the plant gets in Florianopolis. Here you could probably see the biggest distinction. Here in Southern California, we get our wet season in the winter and our dry season in the summer, which is basically the complete opposite of Brazil. I think that's the key that I've been missing in growing this plant. So obviously, as you can see in the winter time, we get about 2 inches of rainfall during the winter season, and that's still less than what they get in the wild in Brazil. So we're about 1 inch short per month. If this plant is outside during the winter season, I know that I could probably supplement water and the plant will still chug on through. But of course, it has to balance between the cooler temperatures. So I'll have to figure that out. If I bring this plant inside during the winter season, then I can bump up the waterings for this plant and know that it will still do quite well. When it comes to summertime, just like it is now, I know I have to significantly raise the amount of water that I've been giving this plant. So watering during the summertime is actually really important for this plant because here in Southern California, we get absolutely zero rain. And that means Everything that this plant is getting right now is just being hand watered. So whatever water I'm providing it, that's what it's getting. Right now I know that the watering frequency is definitely not enough. I think during this growing season, the plant needs so much water that it has to actually stay almost consistently moist during the growing season so that it can grow these big, happy, healthy bulbs. Right now I do a minimum of about once a week and up to 3 times a week if I'm having a heat wave. And I think I might have to just regularly use 3 times a week as the minimum, all the way to every day, to make sure that this plant gets enough hydration. It seems like a lot in my current situation, but it's probably really typical in other places. And where this purpurata naturally grows, that's what it's getting. It's probably getting daily showers, and that's why it grows really well in its natural state. In order to help this plant grow its best, I think from this point forward, I have to water this plant a lot more. And if I choose to repot it, then it has to be in a lot finer medium. So it might be in small bark or in straight sphagnum moss during the growing season so that it can really harvest all the water it needs to really get really healthy pseudobulbs. So to wrap it up, my Laelia purpurata is still in recovery, and there are some things and tweaks that I need to do in my culture to make sure that this plant gets healthy and so it can be a more vigorous plant. I mean, the plant overall is fairly healthy. It's not a weak plant. It's definitely trying to grow, but I think I'm just not providing enough resources for it to really get to that state where it can be healthy enough to bloom. This has been a huge learning experience for me because I am trying to understand how these plants adapt to our natural environment. And here in Southern California, it's pretty much the opposite of what they get, and they don't get enough water in our current season. Here in Southern California, we get enough light duration, and the temperatures are fairly consistent enough that this plant is happy. The only thing I really have to pay attention to is watering. So I think that's going to be my main focus on trying to rehabilitate this plant, is to make sure I give it enough water during the growing season. So that's what's going on with my Laelia purpurata, and I hope you check out all the other YouTubers that are part of this care collab to see all their beautiful flowers, all their beautiful blooms, and also how they grow this plant in their various setups and locations. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye!